Okay, I think I'm going to get started. I see people are slowly trickling in. So again, thank you for joining us today. I hope you learned a lot from that first panel, and I hope you had some interesting discussions in your group setting. Again, there'll be opportunity to regroup again when you hear from the second panel. I wanted to spend, I don't know, maybe, I guess about 12 minutes or so reflecting on the state of qualitative research in organizational sciences. And a lot of these data points are from you all, from our participants here. We asked many questions as you registered for the conference. So I want to share some of that collective information with you all, because we learned a lot just from that registration process. As I mentioned in my opening remarks, this is literally a global conference. I know this map doesn't really show the extent to which you're all represented, but we have very significant representation from all over the world. And I think what that means is qualitative researchers, either the desire to be a qualitative researcher or actually those who are engaging currently in qualitative research, we're all over the world. And while we're predominantly represented in North America, there is lots of representation here at this conference from many parts of the world. And I couldn't help myself but to show you exactly what this looks like in terms of the numbers. And you can see from these columns that we're well represented beyond North America and Europe and China and India. So it's really exciting. And I was even enjoying the chats, people introducing themselves from all over the world. So it's really exciting to have everybody here. And I hope you're getting a chance to meet each other across different geographies and maybe even within your own geography, and you can find opportunities to collaborate. We have people from as far away as Oman and Zimbabwe. So it's excellent to see you all here today and see this kind of representation. Oops. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about is some other items that we captured. I thought, as someone that studies gender dynamics in the workplace, I thought it was interesting to show you the breakdown of who signed up. And again, this is only based on about 1,600 or so participants, and not everybody filled this in. But I did wonder when I saw these charts, is qualitative research inherently gendered? And is there any data that supports this beyond, these conference data points that we collected? And, so I had to dig into this a little bit to see if this is true. It wasn't something that I had ever really thought about. But there is evidence. One paper in particular that's cited here actually pulled data from 1986 to 2008. So again, I think a revision of this analysis is certainly needed, but pulling data from some of our leading management journals suggests that more papers, or at least they observed that women were overrepresented and men were underrepresented in published qualitative studies as compared to non-qualitative papers. And this remained steady over the period as well as for the journal. So I thought that was an interesting data point. They suggested that this might be the case based on the types of theorizing that is being done. But again, I think this is a little bit outdated as it was collected between 1986 and 2008. So I think an update of that information would be important to look into. The other thing that I found particularly interesting about who's attending today is, while it's probably not surprising that a little bit more than half of the people that signed up for this conference are doctoral students, there was also a significant number of junior and senior faculty members, particularly senior faculty members, that were interested in learning more about qualitative methods. And as we heard from the panelists, it's a growing method because there's so many different types of methods and so many different opportunities to explore research and understand the lived experiences of participants, or through archival methods and participant observation and so forth. So there's a much broader range of qualitative methods that are out there. And I think that's why you're seeing this interest from so many different people. My favorite response when we asked the question, who are you? What's your background? Someone said, I'm a doctoral student when it comes to qualitative methods. So I think that speaks to the idea that, some people might be more senior in their field, may have learned quantitative methods or experimental designs, and really want to learn about qualitative methods and are in the early stages. I do know, however, from some of the participants that did sign up, many of you are very well versed in qualitative methods. So I think we're always learning regardless of what career stage we're at. But it does beg the question, with more than half signing up, to learn more about qualitative research people that are in doctoral programs, the question is, are our doctoral programs offering enough methods in qualitative designs? And are they up to date? Because as we heard from our panelists, there's so many different methods out there, and it's growing, and there's lots of opportunities to engage in it. Another thing I found interesting in terms of people who signed up beyond, I guess, the typical academic researchers who would be likely to attend this conference, we also had people in research administration, which I thought was interesting because they want to learn about how their faculty and their organizations, or maybe if they're non-academic organizations, how qualitative research works, consultants, and we also had a lawyer. So I thought that was interesting as well. In terms of what methods people are most familiar with, I don't think this is probably terribly surprising that when it comes to being familiar with qualitative methods, interviews was what most people knew most about. Case method, archival, and ethnography, were all in the 30% range. We did also have a significant number of people that were only or primarily focused on quantitative methods or primarily experimental. So we welcome our quantitative friends to our community. And I don't know how many of you have seen this meme. I know it was going around social media a couple of years ago. I think this speaks to, I think, the colorful nature of our community of qualitative researchers and the breadth of the different types of qualitative research that we do. And we're not that scary to the quant researchers out there, and we welcome you to our community. I can promise you we have a lot of fun. Now, one of the other things that we captured in collecting registration information is some of the challenges. Stina mentioned this in her talk, that a lot of you talked about access to data as being a challenge. And the reason why in this word cloud data is so prominent here is when analyzing some of the answers to this question, what is most challenging to you about qualitative research? Data was really front and center, with not only respect to access to data, and actually, Stina mentioned archival data, being more easily and readily accessible than other forms of qualitative methods. But it wasn't just access; it was also analysis, right? And then the interpretation of findings. And Kevin alluded to, really figuring out how to dig deeper into those findings as well. And so I think this speaks to some of those big challenges in terms of data analysis, access, and also the interpretation of data. The other things that were very prominent in terms of challenges were building theory, which is very, very challenging in qualitative research, particularly due to the inductive nature of it, and also writing up findings. People often have a hard time with that as well. So I think when you hear from, well, our past panelists talked a little bit about that, but something you might discuss in your next small group discussions and might come up also in the next panel. So although there are challenges, I don't always like to be so negative, there's lots of positives going on in qualitative research and lots of opportunities. As many of our panelists spoke to, there's a growing interest in a range of different qualitative methods. I think, when I was getting my doctorate, some of these qualitative methods were never discussed. And we also are bringing in methods. You can even see from some of the sites and books that were suggested by some of our panelists, we're bringing in methods, qualitative methods that are used in different types of fields, and bringing them into our organizational sciences field. So there's a growing interest in a range of different methods. Also, as noted by many of our panelists that we have in both of our sessions, many of them are associate editors at our top journals. I believe at every single one of our top management journals is at least one. In some cases, I think at AMJ, there's now 3 qualitative associate editors. So that speaks volumes to, having people that are well-versed in qualitative methods, analyzing our papers and seeing them through the process, and also a rise in editorial board members as well. I have been particularly excited that journals like Journal of Applied Psychology now really accepting a lot more qualitative research and having a lot more editors who have that expertise, as well as editorial board members. And so what does this mean for the field? Well, it's great, because growing number of submissions, growing number of associate editors, growing number of editorial board members means eventual publications in qualitative research. And I'm excited to show this next slide, because if you look at this analysis that we ran through Web of Science, what it shows is really the growth track of qualitative research in top management journals, right? And so we looked at the top papers published in management journals such as ASQ, Org Science, AMJ, SMJ, and also AMR, which often publishes editorials on qualitative methods. And you can see this growing number of citations, publications and citations going along with it. You can see that 2021 was a particularly good year. I suppose we're probably still waiting on some of the data from the 2 current years, or at least 2023 and 2022. And then finally, we looked at the rough percentage of qualitative papers that appear in these top management journals as compared to quantitative papers. And you can see that in a 3-year moving average, qualitative papers make up about 14% of eventual published papers in these journals. So not a huge number, but certainly a growing number, as we can see by this chart. So what does that mean for those of us interested, engaged in qualitative methods? Well, we know from what we just discussed and what we just saw from the data that you all provided to us as registrants in this program, that qualitative research has worldwide appeal. Scholars of all academic ages have a strong interest in a range of qualitative methods. We know that many quantitative scholars are interested in qualitative methods. And then finally, we're seeing huge growth in the submission rates and eventual publications of qualitative research. So I find that to be particularly exciting. It was exciting to organize this conference with other qualitative researchers and to see the kind of crowds that we were able to attract as a result of this. So I think that speaks volumes. So next, we are going to have a quote unquote coffee break, but feel free during that time to go back to small groups, engage in speed dating, or you can also even use the chat function. And then we're going to join a second panel in about 10 minutes. And that second panel is going to focus on how to publish qualitative research. And we have some additional top leaders in the field in qualitative research who will be part of that session. So at this point, you will exit this webinar and you can take a break, and then we're going to rejoin the webinar at 11:45. Thank you all.